My wife and I were high school sweethearts. Back then, in high school, I was the guy who wasn't popular. In fact, I used to be bullied, which affected my personality a lot. On the other hand, my wife was famous in our school set, and almost everyone loved her, including me. The first time I got to talk to her was in a biology class, and we hit it off there. Unlike the other girls who didn't have my time, my wife was kind to me, and at some point, we started sharing lunch tables together. Fast forward to senior year, I summoned the courage to ask my wife out, and she said yes. She was my first real girlfriend, and that's how our relationship began. My wife and I were crazy about each other, and because of her unique character and popularity, we became one of the most famous couples in school. We were always together outside school, and our families loved and accepted us. As regular teenagers, we had our ups and downs. We broke up a couple of times, but still got back together. When we were done with high school, we applied for the same college, and luckily we were both taken. Life for us was terrific. We grew and lived together, and we could explore so many things together, which was very beautiful for me. Eventually, after college, my wife and I got 2 great paying jobs in our hometown, and we were happy to return. It was what we always wanted, and when we had that, we were so happy. My father told me it was great and noble to be with one woman and cherish what we shared, and I took his words to heart. From our teenage years and throughout our dating years, I never cheated on my wife or looked at another woman inappropriately. I loved my wife and didn't want anything to come between what we shared. When we returned to our hometown, people were still surprised we were together because they didn't believe we would last that long. Whenever we walked on familiar streets, we would see people look at us in awe, and that was a win for us, especially since they knew me as that shy kid that could not look strangers in the eye while talking. After my wife and I settled down, we worked for almost a year in different organizations, and I proposed to her. She was thrilled when I did, and without wasting time, she said yes. Aside from verbally telling my wife that I loved her, it was evident from what I did for her. I gifted her a lot, especially after I started earning well. I got her nice clothes, shoes, jewelry, and books from her favorite authors. She loved reading romantic comedies, and I gave her something special on all our anniversaries and birthdays. I did all this because I loved her and wanted her to enjoy every moment she spent with me. Our love story continued smoothly as we planned our wedding, and eventually we got married. Our wedding was neither big nor small, but it was terrific. All of our friends from high school who heard about our marriage attended, especially to see if it was true that my wife and I got married. After our wedding, we both moved into a new apartment I rented, and a year later, we had our first child, a boy. The birth of our son changed a lot of things for me, and it caused me to take life more seriously. With our son in our lives, I worked harder and ensured I was always there for my family. I made a lot of sacrifices, literally paused my life, and it was even more challenging for me because my dad fell ill around the same year my son was born, and I had to juggle between providing for my family and taking care of my ill father. Unfortunately, my father passed away when my son was 3 years old, which was one of my life's most challenging moments. After the birth of my son, my wife and I grew a little bit distant because she always had to take care of the baby. I was told it was expected, so I didn't take it to heart. I believed that after our baby could walk and maybe lessen the responsibility on my wife, we would get back to how we used to be, but I was wrong. The older our son grew, the more distant we became. It got so bad that the only time we had a long conversation would be when she either complained about something or reminded me that I had to go grocery shopping or forgot to take out the trash. It was funny how we went from high school sweethearts who could not live without each other to a couple that always argued and fought. Despite all that was going on between us, I still loved my wife, and I treated her with so much love because I badly wanted us to return to how we used to be. I just believed she was having a hard time as a new mom and would get back to it with time, but I was wrong. One weekend, my wife and son visited her parents, and I was alone at home. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't because the thought of my wife didn't let me. So I got busy when I was tired of lying in bed. I cleaned the house, did the laundry, and I decided to clean the attic, too, since it had been months since I went there last. While cleaning the attic and organizing things, I stumbled on a small box I didn't remember putting there. Out of curiosity, I opened the box, and it was filled with letters. I was initially surprised because my wife barely went to the attic, and since I wasn't the one that put the box of letters there, it had to be her. At that point, all I wanted to know was the letters' purpose. As I read them, my heart skipped. On reading the first letter, I realized they were love letters my wife received from her lover, and I also found out that her lover was my high school bully, the same guy that used to publicly humiliate me. At first, I didn't believe what I had read because my wife knew how much I hated the same guy, and I would never imagine her cheating on me. But after I spent time going through all of the letters, I realized it was true. I was so heartbroken and shocked. I even found out that their affair started a couple of months after we moved back into town, and they had a couple of flings while we were still teenagers. I knew he was still in town. We had seen each other a couple of times, but I never spoke to him, and he never tried to either. He always had an annoying smirk, and it fueled my anger for him. The good thing was our high school reunion was just around the corner, and my wife and I were already making plans. We were actively involved in the planning committee because we were one of the few in town. So I took some of the letters and made plans to expose her and her lover. Also, in some of the letters, I had seen my bully ask about my son, and I couldn't fight off the feeling that something else was happening. So when my son and wife returned, I acted like everything was cool, and since we weren't so close, she didn't notice anything different about me. I was so mad at her that I hoped my son was mine for her sake. To confirm my suspicion, I secretly took a paternity test, and the results showed that I had been raising another man's son all this while. This was the last straw that broke the camel's back for me. I wanted to throw her and her son out, but I wanted to do it more epically. D-Day eventually came, as you would think. My wife and I made a show. She acted like we were still madly in love with each other, and everyone had their eyes on us. As part of the plan, I was meant to give a speech and appreciate those who traveled from different parts of the country to attend our reunion, and while I made the speech, I told a story of a man who loved and cherished his wife, but she cheated on him with his enemy. I did that to instigate my classmates, and it worked, and at the end of the story, I exposed to everyone that my wife was the person I was talking about. She was shocked, and everyone was shocked too. She pretended she didn't know who I was talking about, but I was smart enough to project copies of their letters. I had snapped, and everywhere was quiet for a while. Suddenly, one of my classmates who lived in our town too shouted at the top of her voice that it was true, and everyone gasped. Well, it turned out that everyone from the planning committee knew my wife was having an affair with my bully, and no one mentioned it to me, but on that day, they took turns in confirming it. At the spot, my wife started to cry and beg me. She was already soiled in drinks from some of our angry classmates, and it pleased me to see them empty their drinks on her face. She thought I didn't know her lover was the father of the boy I was raising, but I also announced that I would be suing him for child support for all the years I took care of their son, and I left the party afterward. That same evening, I had my wife's and her son's stuff thrown out on our front lawn. I wanted to do that from the day I learned about her affair, but I had to wait. When I woke up the following day, it was all gone, and I knew she had come to take them. I divorced her so she could go and be with her lover, and I also hired a lawyer that helped me in getting what I had spent. Finding out that my wife was cheating on me was my ultimate heartbreak. Till now, I have not been able to get over it. I poured my life into our relationship and marriage, but she betrayed me and destroyed everything. If I get married again, the first thing I'll do when my child comes is a DNA test. I can't handle this level of heartbreak twice. OP, finding out that your wife was cheating on you with your high school bully is certainly betrayal on another level. You handled this well by exposing her in front of everyone and divorcing her. You have a whole life ahead of you. Focus on that and leave the past behind. I know it's painful, but you've got to forget everything and move on. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now, let's move on to the next story for today. After being friends for almost a year, I figured my wife was the woman I wanted to get to know better and possibly spend the rest of my life with her, so I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she said yes. We started dating, and our love for each other skyrocketed too. We were the perfect couple. We wore matching outfits, did things together, gifted each other, and I tried as much as possible to make her always happy. I was earning very well, so gifting her expensive things was not an issue. She was a fashion queen, and I knew the kind of clothes, shoes, and bags she loved. Whenever I could, I would take her shopping to buy whatever she wanted, because seeing her happy made me happy too. We dated for 1 year before she moved in with me, and after 2 years of dating, we got married. Aside from companionship, one of the reasons I asked my wife to move in with me while we were still dating was that I traveled a lot, and since my apartment was bigger and more comfortable than hers, it wouldn't be great for me to lock it up, travel, and still pay rent. After we got married, we didn't have any reason to move out because we weren't expecting to have kids anytime soon, and I already loved the neighborhood and the few friends I made in the neighborhood. They gave me a sense of belonging, and I didn't want to change that. While we were dating, my wife was also able to make friends with some of the neighbors, and the friendship even grew more potent after we got married. The first 3 years of our marriage were beautiful. We loved and treated each other with so much love and respect. On weekends, we would hold small get-togethers for the neighbors in our house or any other neighbor's house, and we got along with everyone. Even though I traveled for different business trips, I never considered cheating on my wife. I always carried her picture in my wallet and in my car, which I did for several reasons. I didn't think my wife would cheat on me because I satisfied her in bed, provided everything she wanted, and treated her like a husband should treat his wife. Our lives were going on perfectly until one day. Everything I saw altered that day and destroyed the relationship my wife and I shared. I had traveled for a 4-day business trip, and when I returned, I noticed that my wife was acting a little edgy. She didn't go cold on me or anything. She acted edgy, and I suspected something was wrong. At first, I thought she had broken a family vase my father had passed down to me, but I checked, and the vase was still in perfect condition. To be sure of what was wrong, I checked the footage from our house security camera, and somehow the footage of the last 4 days I had traveled for my business trip was missing. It was undeniable that she had deleted it, and that raised my suspicion. I didn't ask her about it because I knew she would try to convince me, so I quietly worked on recovering them. After I had successfully recovered the deleted files, I was shocked to see explicit videos between my wife and a new neighbor we just had. He has been visiting the house the past few days, and my wife and I received him warmly. The craziest part was that I didn't notice or suspect anything was happening between them. I just believed my wife was being lovely to him like she was to the other neighbors. And maybe if she did not give herself out, I would not have known they were having an affair. While I was away, they did it on our bed and even on the parlor couch, which made me very furious. I didn't feel heartbroken at that moment like most people would describe. I felt rage. I wanted to hurt her badly, but didn't want to do anything stupid. Before my trip, I planned a neighborhood barbecue to welcome this new neighbor who was cheating on me with my wife, and I thought of the perfect plan. As for my wife, she didn't know that I found out about her affair. I played along and acted like everything was fine. A couple of days later, we had the welcome party, and after a lot of eating and drinking, we were supposed to watch a good movie as neighbors. After everyone had gathered, I played them a movie, not the one they expected to see, but the kind of movie they would not stop talking about in a very long time. I played the videos of my wife and our new neighbor I had recovered, and everyone was shocked. My wife could not believe it, especially with the wide grin on my face. Her eyes nearly fell out of her socket when everyone turned in her direction, and the shame on her face was evident. Immediately, the new neighbor's girlfriend started yelling at her boyfriend, and when she couldn't take it anymore, she broke up with him on the spot. On the other hand, my wife cried her eyes out and turned to her neighborhood friends to help her beg me, but everyone was so disappointed that they shunned her and didn't say a word to her. After they had seen what I wanted them to see, I told them that the barbecue was over, so they all left. After everyone left, my wife cried and said, "It isn't what you think. Allow me to explain." Hearing that line made me so furious that I yelled at her and told her not to step into my house again. I also told her that I was already processing the divorce papers and that soon she would hear from my lawyer. I threw some of her stuff out and I shut the door. Honestly, humiliating her publicly pacified me a bit, but it was nothing compared to the heartbreak I felt. I loved her so much and envisioned spending the rest of my life with her. I didn't see her again after that day, and the new neighbor left too. I guess he took her with him because they knew they ruined their relationship with our neighbors. We eventually divorced, and I sincerely hope she has a miserable life. This happened to me 5 years ago, and although I have moved on, the thought of my present girlfriend cheating on me with another man still crawls up in my stomach to date. I try to fight it as much as possible, but I know most women don't deserve genuine love. They are selfish and only think about themselves. OP, most women don't deserve love, and giving your love to the wrong woman must have hurt. However, you shouldn't judge your present girlfriend based on your past. Just because your wife cheated on you doesn't mean your present girlfriend will. It might be hard, but you've got to open your heart again so you don't miss out on the beautiful things of your new relationship. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me.